Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening. This is the Chronicles of Apple from the Apple of My Eye, and today I'm going to sing one day at a time and then go over some of the things that I'm learning and also some of the things that we really need to pray. And it is late, so I'm a little tired, but I wanted to spit out this video because it's important to flutter around when you're a butterfly. So this one is One Day at a Time by Linda Randall. Okay, and it goes like this. And join me if you can, and all you have to do is pop up the lyrics. Okay, one day at a time. One day at a time, sweet Jesus, that's all I'm asking of you. Just give me the strength to do every day what I have to do. Yesterday's gone, sweet Jesus, and tomorrow may never be mine. God help me today, show me the way, one day at a time. I'm only human, I'm just a woman. Help me believe in what I could be and all that I am. Oh, show me the staircase that I had to climb. Lord, for my sake, teach me to take one day at a time. One day at a time, sweet Jesus, that's all I'm asking of you. Just give me the strength to do every day what I have to do. Yesterday's gone, sweet Jesus, and tomorrow may never be mine. Help me today, show me the way, one day at a time. Oh, do you remember when you walked among men? Well, Jesus, you know, if you're looking below, it's worse now than then. Oh, there's pushing and shoving, and it's crowding my mind. Lord, for my sake, teach me to take one video at a time. One day at a time, sweet Jesus, that's all I'm asking of you. Just give me the strength to do every day what I have to do, like cooking and cleaning and going to work. Oh, yesterday's gone, and if you are a soldier, you might have to clean your shoes. May the Lord help you today. I will help you today. Fix your hair now and then. Just give me the strength to do every day what I have to do. Well, sometimes you have to do all kinds of elimination, if you know what I mean. Um, there's a lot of things to clean up in Israel. Oh, yesterday's gone, sweet Abba, and tomorrow may never be mine. Lord, help me today, show me the way, one day at a time. Okay, so that is the song. Lord, help me today, show me the way, one day at a time, one day at a time. Okay, so I had to play this song, and I wish I could put the music on, but I know they're gonna put a strike on this channel if I do that. And I've been kicked out of YouTube so many times. I've been in and out of Facebook jail so many times, and oh, they put me back on. I had like a 24-hour. I got kicked out, and they said you cannot post. Okay, you're a baddie. So anyway, that's fine. You know, I learned my lesson. I'm trying to behave on Facebook. So anyhow, the interesting thing that I've learned recently is that there's a lot of ex-Muslims that are now gathering in London, and that is a praise report. it's also a praise report that the Lord vindicated Israel, because the fire that they claim has happened in Rafah. You know, they make it sound like, oh, these Jewish people they're gonna burn off all these people in Rafah. And mind you, they get like humanitarian aid, and it's not like, I think they don't deserve it. It's just that I know the reason that Palestinians get their food, it's not because of Hamas. It's because of the between the Jews and the Christians pouring out the food, and taking care of them, and the United Nations, the League of Nations, being very much on the side of the Palestinians. Um, you could tell that even the terrorists, I mean, they're not starving, okay? And the civilians are also, you know, they are getting their food. Now, there's been cases where they have no food, but you've got to realize this is war, and in war, crazy things happen. Um, this particular war, and I have to reiterate why it happened, is that this is not just, this is sort of like this kind of war is sort of brewing for so many years. Every time I've been to Israel, there was always, it was either the Hezbollah or some kind of a family getting ransacked in their homes while they're just doing regular things. And there were three boys that were abducted. That also caused, like, practically, like, it really pissed off a lot of Jewish people. And every time they just do not understand why somebody would just try to snatch their kids. And they are very sympathetic to the Palestinians, and I know that personally, because for every Jewish person that I've seen, if let's say there is a very if there is a very diplomatic, Palestinian or Arab, they give each other a hug. In fact, they do go to the market. You've got to realize the Jews, if you visited Israel, it is fascinating, because every Shabbat they're gonna close the shop. So where are you gonna go? You're gonna go to the Muslim sector because they're gonna be open, or you're gonna go to the Christian sector because they are open. And then if while during the Shabbat, you know, the Jewish people learn to befriend their Muslim neighbors. They really do. And it just dawned on me, like, this is the reason why, like, they have to commingle, if you think about it. In fact, I think uh, there is a truer friendship that could take place there, because I mean, there is animosity on the background, but because of people's necessity. Okay, let's say, okay, so Friday, the Muslims, they do their prayer. Saturday, it's the Jewish people, and then Sunday, it's the Christians. So they're all into this one particular land. It's like a pizza pie. It's actually not so much of a pizza pie. It does have a little bit of like a handlebar, I guess. I'm not good at drawing it, but it's kind of like that, I guess. Anyway, I could just pull it out. So they have to collaborate. And like I said, I've seen Jewish people really embrace embrace, the Palestinians. And there are really and there's even it's not really interracial, but interfaith marriages that takes place. There's also, like, some of them, like, for example, the ultra orthodox, you know they're not always favored by certain groups, in particular within Israel, but they will get together for other reasons. And then you've got the gay people of the Jewish people and the Christian people and the Muslim people getting together. They have a club. They will share that space, and because they're gay. And then there's just, all different strata from the left to the right among the Jewish people and among the Muslims. And the ideology, the people that are heavily trained and heavily brainwashed, not just on a superficial level, or they feel like they've got to bow down to Hamas, and not only because of certain, they probably don't want them themselves to be considered as disloyal because that could indicate, your death. Um, right now, there is more and more artilleries being found in the Rafah border, and Egypt is totally embarrassed. It's not just embarrassed. The Egyptians were never that innocent, but they are, because of the Abrahamic treaty or some kind of a peace accord. They are playing it safe with the Jewish people. But then when it came down to Rafah, no one had any idea well, there are probably people that know it, but never wanted to divulge it. It literally looks like a labyrinth of a spider's web. Okay, I couldn't understand how you could have 700 tunnels and then 50 of them at the minimum is going to go to Egypt, and it's supposed to be demilitarized, but then when the Jews ended up on the other end, they started shooting at each other. So it is, they're waiting for them, I guess, on the other side. And so this causes a rip between the diplomacy of the Jews and the Egyptian. And in Jeremiah 42, the Lord clearly made a statement that the Jewish people should not venture into Egypt. They should not sojourn into Egypt. And the Lord has a plan. And and then there's Iran and the constituents of Iran. Okay, I just spoke with somebody who's Iranian. She's personally not very hopeful that there will ever be a regime change, just probably because her experiences, it has never changed. But apparently the Iranians are Zoroastrians, and the Persian is not really Arab. Okay, so it's different. And the Iranians, or the Iranian, Iran, they call it Iran. In Iran, they really hate the fact that they are starving, and then the money gets sent into Hamas, and it's not really helping the Palestinians, and they have nothing to do with the Palestinians, so they don't understand why the money is getting thrown over there. And then Iran it's like an octopus. It's got tentacles everywhere, really. It's got tentacles in Iraq. They're so happy that American took it over, and now that when it got empty, the Islamic regime is taking over there, and then in Yemen and the Houthis, and then there's the Hezbollah, Syria, Lebanon, and then you've got the Palestinians that they have, their tentacles are all over the place in Gaza and the West Bank, and also now in Egypt. So Muslim Brotherhood is the origin of Hamas. Hamas started out, the Muslim Brotherhood started out as a humanitarian cause to feed the poor among the Muslims. And then it got switched around because of this guy named Sheikh Yassin. He looked like an invalid guy, honestly. And this Sheikh Yassin kind of constructed Hamas in a way that it becomes kind of like militaristically. And this is nothing new, because the word assassin originated from the word hashish, which is basically, it was coined because when the royals, having read the Bible, so they learned about the Bible, they were so impressed, they were able to manage their kingdoms, and they feel like, oh, I wanted to see what it's like in Israel, because they read about it, right? So they read, and then, or they had a lot of Jewish people that were teaching them about the Bible. So when they ventured into Israel, and mind you, it's not that hard for them to go. I mean, they could just it will take them days, but they can make it there. For example, Ukraine is a short distance to get to Israel. And then if you're coming from London, I always had a layover in London, and I could make it to Israel very easily. So it's just a few hours. Even Germany, all of those European nations, they can easily go to Israel by plane. But back then, they would painstakingly do so much just to venture into Israel. And these royals would go there and they are like being ransacked, like literally beheaded, to the point that they got really smart and they're like, wait a minute, before I before they go there, they decided they're going to have a military to protect them. They have to have security guards. And that's what created the crusades. Okay? First crusade, second crusade, third crusade. Maybe there's more. But the first crusade is that they are the knights. When you think about the knights, a Templar and all that, it is because those people dedicated their lives for the protection of the royals. And in exchange, the royals actually gave them some kind of a dowry or some kind of a gift. And so you would hear people's names like Anderson, Cooperson, Peterson, okay? And that means the son of Andy, the son of Jeffer, the son of, the son of Peter, okay? And if you are a knight and you have a son, if you are, let's say your father is a very good knight for the king and queen, okay? And if they are such good knights, okay, the king or the queen or the dukes is going to have a lot of land. And because they know that you protected them, they would give you a land, okay? So their children, the boys, are going to inherit. Therefore, they would they would say the son of Peter's son. So anytime you see Jameson, Peterson, those families come from the Crusader families from England and so on. Okay, so the Crusaders had to develop in order to assist the royals to travel into Israel. And when they would travel to Israel, because it is under the Ottoman Empire for 400 some years, they're gonna get slaughtered. And so they coined the word assassin from hashish, because these people are high, okay? And what is Hamas? Okay, Hamas, it's kind of like it's not an army. It's like a, it's very weird. They don't wear uniform. They hide behind people, and they do all kinds of deception. Okay, this is very cowardly of a military, honestly. But back in the days, these Muslim people, they conquer by the sword. So if the kings and queens are coming there, the knights are going to be fighting with the assassins, okay? Which is basically, they're under the Ottoman Empire, the Arabs within Israel. And when they go in there, they have to really, like, let's say, I don't know how many years it was before the first crusade took place. They can get away with Texas, and they can get away, it's an easy job, kind of, if you like, fighting and killing. And so these crusaders are not necessarily religious people. Maybe the first one is, but soon afterward, they're just like money-hungry mercenaries. And back in the days when there were famine and everything, so these kings and queens, they want to pay homage to Israel. They can't just leave their castle. I mean, you don't want to leave your castle, it's going to get taken over. And so what they would do is they would go to the knights, okay? The knights is going to take an inventory of everything that the king and queen have. And in this book, okay, that became the first bank, okay? The Templar order, it's a temple. So when the first bank is like a temple, they even sort of copied, like the Switzerland, you'll see Sion, okay? So it's really fascinating because, I mean, eventually the Crusaders just became money hungry people. And then there developed an issue because the Pope has a lot of money. There's a lot of donation. Anybody that wants to become a priest, you have to give all of your inheritance to the Pope and to the Holy See. And that is the rule. And the Crusaders were developing their own affluence through the dukes and the kings and the queens that they are supporting. So if you were to look at what Hamas is about, it is not any different from the assassins of that time. And that has been their job. It is a particular spirit. And unlike before, though, where, they're in horse and buggies, nowadays, these assassins, okay, are now using ARs and rockets and all that. And the people that are Muslim really don't know a whole lot about the Bible. They believe that they do know the Bible, but on account that, they are the people of the book. But the very essence of Christianity is literally obliterated because their religion is so, it has a particular method to it. It's kind of like, oh, you want to know what to do, how to divorce your wife. It actually states it there. You just say, I divorce you, I divorce you, I divorce you, and then they divorce the woman. They do honor killing, and they can marry very young women. You could have like a 50-year-old, 60-year-old marrying a 10-year-old. And people, if their parents owed a lot of money, the daughter would be like a chip that has to be um, sold out as a bride. Okay, now being a bride of a Muslim man, that could mean you are the third wife, fourth wife, or whatever, you know. And there's things that they should have. They have to be able, if they do divorce them, they have to still provide for them, something like that. But to what degree that is really followed, I don't know. Also, there's a lot of suicide among the women, especially if they were too young to be married. And one of the biggest reason I got on board with YouTube videos is because I felt so terrible about these women who not only are sacrificing their own children. I think the reason for the suicidal ideation and sacrificing their own children for the betterment of society, because if they were to give up the child, let's say they owe a lot of money and they give the child to this relatively richer guy than who they are, obviously, then they don't have to feed that child. Okay, and in the Muslim and especially in the desert kind of place, it's like it's very hot. I mean, food is scarce. And if you have money, I mean, the very well, you protect the well because it's it's a very important resource. And so it would be too many mouths to feed. And so the sooner that they can marry a girl off, then they don't have to feed her. Someone else has to feed her. And then if that girl is scuttled away to an older man, now she becomes his problem. And oftentimes, because of immaturity or the physical abuse that happens, these women almost like to get their husband off their back, they're actually happy if he finds another woman. Okay. And then if you have a child already and you don't want to keep giving birth, maybe having that extra woman and that for a husband that you don't even care for would probably be a good idea. So and then they can marry their cousin. So uh, and they wouldn't mind in a sense, like the law is more male oriented in a sense that the man is less likely to be castigated or not castigated meaning beaten up, okay, in a in certain situation, because the men are not subject to the honor killing as much as the women are. The women are, the men will fight and kill each other. Or if they wanted to have a man do something for them, let's say a police guard, okay, found that there was this orphan girl and her father belongs to that house. That police is going to go to that house and say, this is your daughter, take her. And then he says, no, that's not my daughter. Well, the police is going to say, I'm going to kill you. You take her in. That's how they talk. Okay. So it's very harsh. And there's just a lot of like when you go to Israel, you will see generations of family. One house is built on top of the other, on top of the other. And I'm not putting this down. I'm just saying it is part of life. They have big families and they got multiple wives, multiple children, and they're probably having children younger age than people do if in the US. And the education of the women is not very high. They're more valued for what they can do for the men. And so cooking, cleaning, and looking good for your husband is probably the main thing. And then raising your children and just cooking the best food. Okay. And hopefully you win the favor of your husband. And I've known women who are one of two. Okay. And she was so in love with her husband. She literally, she's a second wife. Um, the husband goes to Yemen and has another, he's got a wife there and he's got a son. And then he comes back to the US and lives with her. And she's more of like a sugar mama, honestly, because, she makes more money than he does. But she was so in love with him. This is like a rare case, only because they kind of did fall in love with each other. But there are many cases where, especially on an arranged marriage, and they siphon the girl, that woman is going to have such a terrible life that if, let's say, she had a kid, and maybe she's not even happy that she was pregnant again, or because her life is depressing, and they hear that, oh, if your child dies, then you get to go to paradise, then giving up a child for the sake of martyrdom, in their essence, martyrdom is suicide, is okay. Okay, not that I'm sure it can be heart-wrenching for people, but then it can kind of become okay because the issue there is the afterlife. And these people pray 5 times a day, and they pray to Allah on a very fearful manner. So if, let's say, they have a child and they can't really afford anyway, but they're gonna have the fever from the sheikh, from one of the clergy, then they are willing to give up their children, and that is the sickest thing for us to imagine. But these women also had such a horrible life that they probably think that the death of their child is better off, so that they don't have to live another day to deal with life that is so terrible for them. And then it's so easy. It's called the Hagar spirit, the spirit of pity, self-pity, that when they're having so much self-pity, they even exaggerate that, because for women to be heard is to kind of make this it's called ululating, making noise and all that, so to be noticed or to ward things off. So when you look at this culture, there are the richer ones or the more sophisticated ones, and that's the one that we know coming to the United States and all that. Those are the people that have the means and wherewithal, and they probably have parents that are a little bit more sophisticated than the average Muslim dude. Okay, if their father, for example, I know a guy whose both parents are doctors. He's a doctor, his sister is a dentist. Okay, they come from the richer sector of an Iraqi family, and those people are going to be able to pay and get bribed and escape the country. Those people have a little bit more sophistication. For example, the father, who was as a doctor, doesn't really believe in Islam. But in the face of other people, for survival, they will say that they believe in Islam, that they are Muslims. But technically, they are so secular, they don't really practice anything. And that's because the father had an education in Europe. Okay, so those people are different. Okay, and those are the people that can have a voice because they have a little bit more pride, and they feel like, no, that's not how it is in my family. I'm able to speak, my husband loves me, I love my husband, and so on and so forth. Those are different from the average Arab that has to live in place like Israel and generationally. Okay, and so the leadership of Hamas is so controlling. And if it wasn't because of the democracy that is also kind of like the Palestinians are exposed to that, most of the women really don't have a good voice. Okay, they have a voice by being on the side of the terrorists. That they can have. but they're not going to have a voice to go against the establishment, because if they did, it is risking their lives, and they are trained that they have to be either under their husband or under their under their father or their husband or their brother, and they actually do not just go walking without a chaperone, because it is kind of like having lesser dignity as a woman. So you want to be traditional and so on and so forth. So with this being said, okay, Americans and Christians, the one thing that we do not know is that the facade of self-righteousness is actually a mask within a mask for what they truly feel inside. And they don't know that our God is different from their God, okay? Or they believe that their God is better than our God. And Islam is always about some kind of a superiority complex, okay? Where the men feel like they're more of a man, where the women feel like they're more of a protected woman. Okay, if they came from a good family, but half the time there's a lot of abuse, because the lesser the woman can speak up, the lesser educated she is, the higher the rate of abuse. And she has no way of escaping, because in that system there is not kind of like, oh, here's a halfway home for all of you women that your husband beat you up, how dare he do that to you. No, they're most likely not going to have those kinds of social support. And the reason I know that is because I know Filipino women who worked in Saudi Arabia, who worked in different parts of the Muslim area, and they come back abused, okay? Abused. And it is an entitlement that people would have if they were paying for you. You are technically their slaves. There are even the rich families of within the Muslim communities. They're rich, but they literally like to starve their slaves, okay? And how often has Filipinos become a slave, okay, to their masters in the Middle East, who's going to look at them less than human, okay? And Filipinos make really good slaves. That is the one thing, because nowadays it's changing, but it's because with the Filipinos, it's always about accepting your fate. Okay, it's accepting your fate, especially if you're poor. They want to sacrifice their lives to pay for the education of the younger person in the family, and they wanted to lift up and respect and make their family proud. And so what they do is that they work all over the Middle East, and they, I'm not saying that there were those that, wasn't harmed or was treated well in the Middle East. I'm not saying that that doesn't exist, but I would say 8 to 9 times out of 10, there is some type of abuse, some kind of a molestation. And this I knew because of my neighbors that had worked in Saudi Arabia. So being a woman working in Saudi Arabia is not good, or any Abu Dhabi or whatever. Now, if you are on a contract, if you're a contract worker and you're a male, uh, at some point they may not pay you well, but usually they're pretty decent. It's a decent pay for a Filipino. So for men, it becomes a better ordeal for them. And there are communities in Saudi Arabia and so on. And yes, I'm kind of moving away from the whole Palestinian thing, but I'm trying to show here that in the mentality, there's a kind of like a casting system among the Muslims in particular. And many of them do not understand that our God is very different from their God. And if they do think that it's different, it is them thinking that their God is superior because their God will constantly try to kill them. So they're constantly trying to please Allah. It's kind of like having alligators for your God, or having a python for your God, okay? You want to be nice to that python so that it doesn't eat you up. But other than that, it's a python, but they consider it as their God. So, the need to annihilate a country, and in particular Jewish people, it is because there is a satanic uh, force around this entire Islamic regime. Okay, whether you call it the Prince of Persia or some kind of just a demon or whatever, but it is shrouded. It is a death cult in itself, and it's very cancerous. The ideology of the within the Quran is very cancerous, and when children are exposed to it, the parents would cheer for each time they are, solving a math problem that involves killing of the Jews. They're telling their children, those people are terrible to us. Therefore, when you grow up, you get to be a freedom fighter, and you can kill one of them, and people are gonna clap and love this. And oh, I'm glad you said that. Like, oh, you did a good job, because you the child would say, I want to kill him, I want to kill them. And of course, kids are like parrots, they will repeat whatever the parents wanted them to repeat. So this is the kind of mentality that's not just going to leave overnight unless there is a miraculous intervention and the Lord has his hands on them. And so for that matter, I honestly think that this is the time to really learn more about Islam and how to relate the Word of God to them and how to pray for them. Um, the amount of terror tunnels and everything in Rafah, it's the clear indication to me that that doesn't even make sense. I mean, who makes 700 tunnels? I mean, how could you use that appropriately? It's like it's worse than it's like an ant builder. It's very weird. It doesn't seem to have, it's not well thought out as far as I'm concerned. And then oftentimes they would stockpile all these rockets, okay? And they would have young teenagers or maybe even children manage to shoot one of those things for fun. And this is the issue, that it's like the Jewish people are always walking on eggshells, whether they are civilians or whether they are in the military or whether they are fighting a war. If they are walking as a civilian, they better not go in certain places and get targeted. If they are in the military, they can be taunted by a child while you're carrying a gun, and should you have shot this rifle 2 feet away from this kid, you are going to be in trouble. And then there's also a level of disrespect that they're going to get, and then there's always people that can get run over by a car. So there's just so much hatred within the teaching of Islam from a very young age, that is bound to happen. Now there are those people that had become a Christian and so on, and the Christians and the Jewish people that become Christian, they are a little different than the rest, because they will get along, for the sake of the gospel, and there's certain comradeship that they have. But ultimately speaking, the way I think this projection is going on with Israel, I know they said that it's going to last all the way to the 7th, until the end of the year, and so another 6, 7 more months. I believe, by now they're if they didn't already win it, they are winning it in just way less than 7 months. But they do have to maintain a particular presence so that it doesn't recoil back. And for that, I won't be surprised that the next thing to happen, whether they are thinking about it or maybe they haven't, I am pretty certain that there is going to be a lot of proposals to develop Gaza, the West Bank, and it just cannot fall back to the PLO or Hamas, okay? They are going to develop that because it's, to me, a biblical, sensible thing to have to happen. And they're already talking about, like, there's iron for whatever. What is it? Iron for something. There's a group of people in Israel that are planting trees um, in dedication over the men and women who have died. So they're each going to have a plant in their name being planted in some park in Israel. And there's going to be coalition because the Lord is putting in my heart this idea of grafting. Okay, draw near to me and I will draw near to you. And then there is those that you have to stay, you connected. We have to be, as Christians, you kind of cling to uh, the Jews, and in the same way that Naomi and Ruth, like Naomi is the Jewish person, and then Ruth is the Gentile that loves Naomi. So there's going to be loyalty among different sectors of Christians towards Israel, and that is a fact. And there's also, a growing number of, whether it's Arabs for Jews and Christians for Jews. This is like expanding because of the dire situation that's happening in Israel. And so what I'm hoping for, and I'm trying to propose to different people that are within the legal system, or they're in politics, or they are within the journalism, I'm really praying for a petitioning to put an end on Sharia law. Granted, we can't really turn down every refugee. It is not, um, anyway, I'm getting tired here. So the key thing there is that as Christians, we need to encourage the youth to truly understand why Israel is today. And that is bringing in the history straight from the Bible, and even in modern times, the different levels of war strategies that took place, and how many times Israel has won the land. Uh, the Palestinians have nowhere to go. Or Arabs, they're not going to be absorbed in Egypt. They're making that very clear. They're not going to be absorbed in Jordan, even though Queen Rania is a Palestinian Christian. They're not going to be accepted in Saudi Arabia, and many of them will probably venture out into the Western nation and get absorbed in those areas of refugee status. Um, One thing that is really good to actually put into action is a petition against Sharia law, okay? Because we can't really ward off every refugee from Palestine from coming to the US. But the moment you ban certain things, and the moment you educate people that we are not of this and we are not of that, Muslim people actually are very devoted in following. Okay, it's just more into their religion, but they can follow, um, you know, other things as well. Anyway, I'm gonna end it, pretty soon. But yeah. So what I wanted to propose is the end of a ban on Sharia law all over the 50 states. And they're already implementing the law that protects the authority, which is the police, and their cars and everything. And they tell people you can riot, but you cannot be rude to the police and cause and stir. Now, it is very obvious to me that the issue with the riots in the universities is that it's artificially done. It is um, it is the kind of like the Antifa, and the Antifa is supposed to be anti-fascist, but it is completely fascist anyway. And so I'm gonna end it right here because I am getting so tired, and I've got work tomorrow. But I want to continually encourage the people within the United States to petition for a law against Sharia, and to um, put more education among the refugees so that they are going to follow the line. Because I think what the Democratic government did is that they promoted a lot of chaos for some odd reason, and they the purpose of the chaos that takes place in the universities is to sort of ignite an anarchist mentality upon people, and that should not fly. We really need to catch up with all of this socialism in the schools and everything, and teaching in the school that is substandard need to be confronted. So anyway, I'm gonna end right here. Thank you and God bless.